Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Before we get started reading the BFG, I want to go ahead and go through your daily assignments. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen with you. Seems like I'm learning something new every day. Today I'm recording myself on Zoom, so hopefully this works. All right, so now you should be able to see your daily assignments from this morning. The first thing that I wanted you to start with was your digital journal. So go ahead and do slide 11, things I have learned. So if you need some examples for that, you can go ahead and look at mine. Then you have your shades of meaning, page 208 in your packet. I made an optional challenge for you on Seesaw that's supposed to be really fun. I'm going to leave it up for today and tomorrow. And what you can do when you go to the assigned activity, I have all the instructions for you, but you're going to do kind of a charade. So you're going to act out your shades of meaning in order. You have to come up with 3 words with similar meanings on your own, act them out, and then at the very end, you can say what the words are, and all of our friends that are able to watch the video can guess and see if they guess correctly before you tell us what they are. So that's optional again, but if you want to do it, it will be up for today and tomorrow. Reading, you should be done with your book. So you have your plot summary page that you are going to be doing. So that's the page where it says that it has the full page with the beginning, middle, and ends. And I wanted to remind you that your summary, that is just the most important details. Your summary should be brief. And we talked about what every good summary needs to include. The somebody wanted, but so then. So I even said right here, I gave this all to you, all this information of what I expect in each paragraph. Okay, in the beginning, I want you to tell me the title, the main characters, and the setting, kind of just a brief description of what's going on in the book in the beginning. So who are the main characters, the somebody, and what do they want? Just so we have an idea of what's going to happen in the middle. So in the middle, I want to know what the problem is and how they solve it. So that's the but and the so. And then last, at the end, how does the story end? So that's the then, right? And I want to know, was the problem solved or not? And then, so that's that. I want it to be nice and brief. So a lot of the time when you summarize with me, you go on and on with all these details, but in a summary, it's the most important details, those main points that audience reading should know about your book. Okay, so writing, you are finishing your character analysis of Wilbur. So those last few sentences giving the evidence and the closing. You guys have been doing awesome so far. You can see that I wrote a lot of notes and right there in your boxes. So I think you know exactly what to do. You did a good job so far. Okay, in math, we are using the distributive property today. That's what we've been practicing a lot, but now we're applying it to area. This can be kind of tricky, so I want you to watch this video. I said today that it's required. So you're using the distributive property to solve. And then in science today, okay, so there's a really fun lab that you're going to be doing in science today. It tells you how to make a hopper, and you'll read more about what that is and what you're going to be doing with it. The only thing is if you use regular paper to make your hopper, it's going to just fold and bend and it won't work. You need something thicker. So hopefully you have some kind of box, like a cereal box or a cracker box, a piece of cardboard that's not too thick, that's thin enough that you can kind of fold and move around and create something out of. Hopefully you have some kind of little box like that in your pantry or cabinet that you can go ahead and use. So you should have an adult help you cut. So make sure you go through all the instructions first in the hands-on portion of your video, and it will tell you step by step what to do. Okay. If you don't have a box or something like that you can use, a piece of cardboard that you can use for this, it's okay. Don't worry about it, but I still want you to watch the hands-on portion of the video. All right. And I think that is all we have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and here I am again. So we're going to go ahead and read. In the BFG, we left off that Sophie ran back to her room because the BFG, whatever that is, she doesn't know at the time, looked right at her through the window. So she's a little bit scared. So we're going to see what happens. And the next chapter is called The Snatch. Under the blanket, Sophie waited. After a minute or so, she lifted a corner of the blanket and peeped out. For the second time that night, her blood froze to ice and she wanted to scream, but no sound came out. There at the window, with the curtains pushed aside, was the enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face of the giant person staring in. The flashing black eyes are fixed on Sophie's bed. The next morning, a huge hand with pale fingers came sneaking in through the window. The next moment, a huge hand with pale fingers came sneaking in through the window. This was followed by an arm as thick as a tree trunk, and the arm, the hand, the fingers were reaching out across the room towards Sophie's bed. This time, Sophie really did scream, but only for a second, because very quickly, the huge hand clamped down over her blanket, and the scream was smothered by the bedclothes. Sophie, crouching underneath the blanket, felt strong fingers grasping hold of her, and then she was lifted up from her bed, blanket and all, and whisked out of the window. If you can think of anything more terrifying than that happening to you in the middle of the night, then let's hear about it. The awful thing was that Sophie knew exactly what was going on, although she couldn't see it happening. She knew that a monster, or a giant, with an enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face and dangerous eyes, had plucked her from her bed in the middle of the witching hour and was now carrying her out through the window smothered in a blanket. What actually happened next was this. When the giant had got Sophie outside, he arranged the blanket so that he could grasp all the four corners of it at once, and one of his huge hands with Sophie imprisoned inside. In the other hand, he seized the suitcase and the long trumpet thing, and off he ran. Sophie, by squirming around inside the blanket, managed to push the top of her head out through a little gap just below the giant's hands. She stared around her. She saw the village houses rushing by on both sides. The giant was sprinting down the high street. He was running so fast his black cloak was streaming out behind him like the wings of a bird. Each stride he took was as long as a tennis court. Out of the village she ran, and soon they were racing across the moonlit fields. The hedges dividing the fields were no problem to the giant. He simply strode over them. A wide river appeared in his path. He crossed it in one flying stride. Sophie crouched in the blanket, peering out. She was being bumped up against the giant's leg like a sack of potatoes. Over the fields and hedges and rivers they went, and after a while, a frightening thought came into Sophie's head. The giant is running fast, she told herself, because he is hungry and he wants to get home as quickly as possible. And then he'll have me for breakfast. Read one more. The cave. The giant ran on and on. But now a curious change took place in his way of running. He seemed suddenly to go into a higher gear. Faster and faster he went, and soon he was traveling at such a speed that the landscape became blurred. The wind stung Sophie's cheeks. It made her eyes water. It whipped her head back and whistled in her ears. She could no longer feel the giant's feet touching the ground. She had a weird sensation they were flying. It was impossible to tell whether they were over land or sea. The giant had some sort of magic in his legs. The wind rushing against Sophie's face became so strong that she had to duck down again in the blanket to prevent her head from being blown away. Was it really possible that they were crossing oceans? It certainly felt that way to Sophie. She crouched in the blanket and listened to the howling of the winds, and went on for what seemed like hours. Then all at once, the wind stopped its howling. The pace began to slow down. Sophie could feel the giant's feet pounding once again over the earth. She poked her head up out of the blanket to have a look. They were in a country of thick forests and rushing rivers. The giant had definitely slowed down and was now running more normally, although normal was a silly word to use to describe a galloping giant. He leaped over a dozen rivers. He went rattling through a great forest, then down into a valley and up over a range of hills as bare as concrete. And soon he was galloping over a desolate wasteland that was not quite of this earth. The ground was flat and pale and yellow. Great lumps of blue rock were scattered around, and dead trees stood everywhere like skeletons. The moon had long since disappeared, and now the dawn was breaking. Sophie, still peering out from the blanket, saw suddenly ahead of her a great craggy mountain. The mountain was dark blue, and all around it the sky was gushing and glistening with light. Bits of pale gold were flying among delicate frosty white flakes of cloud. And over to one side, the rim of the morning sun was coming up red as blood. Right beneath the mountain, the giant stopped. He was puffing mightily. His great chest was heaving in and out. He paused to catch his breath. Directly in front of them, lying against the side of the mountain, Sophie could see a massive round stone. It was as big as a house. The giant reached out and rolled the stone to one side as easily as if it had been a football. And now, where the stone had been, there appeared a vast black hole. The hole was so large, the giant didn't even have to duck his head as he went in. He strode into the black hole, still carrying Sophie in one hand, the trumpet and the suitcase in the other. As soon as he was inside, he stopped and turned and rolled a great stone back into place so that the entrance to his secret cave was completely hidden from outside. Now that the entrance had been sealed up, there was not a glint of light inside the cave. All was black. Sophie felt herself being lowered to the ground. Then the giant let go of the blanket completely. His footsteps moved away. Sophie sat there in the dark, shivering with fear. He's getting ready to eat me, she told herself. He will probably eat me raw, just as I am. Or perhaps he will boil me first. Or he will have me fried. He will drop me like a rasher of bacon into some gigantic frying pan sizzling with fat. A blaze of light suddenly lit up the whole place. Sophie blinked and stared. She saw an enormous cavern with a high, rocky roof. The walls on either side were lined with shelves, and on the shelves there stood row upon row of glass jars. There were jars everywhere. They were piled up in the corners. They filled every nook and cranny of the cave. In the middle of the floor, there was a table 12 feet high and a chair to match. The giant took off his black cloak and hung it against the wall. Sophie saw that under the cloak he was wearing a sort of collarless shirt and a dirty old leather waistcoat that didn't seem to have any buttons. His trousers were faded green and were far too short on his legs. On his bare feet, he was wearing a pair of ridiculous sandals that for some reason had holes cut along each side, with a large hole at the end where his toes stuck out. Sophie, crouching on the floor of the cave in her nightie, gazed back at him through thick, steel-rimmed glasses. She was trembling like a leaf in the wind, and a finger of ice was running up and down the length of her spine. "Ha!" shouted the giant, walking forward and rubbing his hands together. What has us got here?" His booming voice rolled around the walls of the cave like a burst of thunder. And that's where we leave off. I just have to say, one, I am so hooked by this book. I can't believe I've never read this one before. And two, the language that the author uses in here is just incredible. The description, I can visualize everything. I don't even need to see the pictures. The adjectives, the similes, the metaphors, how they're comparing like and as, like she was shivering like a leaf, it just really, helps you to visualize and picture it like a video or a movie in your head. So I can't wait to see what's next. I really do feel like I'm watching a movie right now. Have a great day, boys and girls. I'm really proud of you. Keep up the excellent work, and I will talk to you at 10 a.m. this morning. Bye.